Hi, I'm Aileen Alexander with Korn Ferry. I co-lead the global cybersecurity practice, and I'm excited to be here with all of you this evening, clearly leaders in our space and known chief information security officers. Wanted to get started first with asking you all, what prepared you for your current role and what you do every day? So perhaps Jason, we'll start with you.
Yeah, the way I would answer that question is there's nothing that can prepare you for this role properly. You may have requisite skills in communications, in technology, in frameworks, in standards, and a lot of different things, but this is one of those roles where it's changing so dramatically and so intensely that there really is nothing that will prepare you. You have to be very adaptable. You have to be very understanding and sort of a quick learn on new technologies, new spaces, new things. You have to be very dynamic. I think there's prerequisites that can certainly help you prepare, but there's no 100% in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, I feel like I'm the accidental CISO, right? It's not like I didn't plan for this, I didn't prepare for this. I used to be an accounting major when I was in college. Certainly back then, there was no such thing as cybersecurity or anything like that. So I just started working, and then it was really like in the 2000s when the banking side, I was at Wells Fargo at the time, went through a very a deep set of kind of controls that they were trying to put in place, a lot of new regulations that came in, and then literally my boss said, hey, we need somebody to be a security officer, and why don't you do that? And so that was kind of my beginning with it. And so I'd say that, yeah, back to what Jason was saying, it's like, yeah, you can't prepare for it, right? But at the same time, I think what you have to bring into it is a lot of good business acumen. Certainly understanding technology is helpful, but at the same time, it's not the only thing that you need. I think to being able to understand kind of how people work, the type of things that you do, because that's what we're all susceptible in the security arena there, because people make mistakes and people are always going to be what they call the weakest link. So I think if you understand that, you have a chance to try to figure out how to solve problems. But yeah, that's what we're doing every single day. We're solving problems. Mm-hmm. And I think that those who can balance all those things and be prepared for something that's going to come that's new, that you haven't seen, whether it's a 0-day or it's a different type of attack or some new regulation that's now come in and try to figure out, like GDPR, how do you handle that? So I think the more adaptable you are with that is going to give you the chance to survive and then be able to hopefully get some success out of it.
So, what I would add, and I agree to some extent that nothing really prepares you for this job, but I will say that there are some life skills that actually do prepare you. If you look at the cybersecurity role, the leader role, you're almost guaranteed to fail. Mm-hmm. And so if you haven't learned how to fail elegantly and how to recover from failure, then you're not going to be successful in this job. Mm. And the other thing that helped me actually to prepare for this kind of role is not being afraid, right? So you cannot have fear, and you have to have courage to do the things that need to be done and to take really difficult positions, unpopular positions. So if you want a popularity contest, this is not one you're going to win. And if you're going to curl up in fear, then this is not the role for you.
So to draw to the parallels of my colleagues, what I like to is, this is the visual. You're stuck on the highway and there is an accident up ahead. So you have a choice to be stuck on the highway and wait, or be the guy in the ambulance or in the FR engine that's gonna circumvent all the traffic. And that's the guy who knows what's going on, and that's the guy with the solution or the assistance, the true expert assistance. So I always liked the game. I liked to be the guy who is involved into the true resolution and making it happen. One thing in our job is that we, by design, have to be able to converse in very complex technical terms, but at the same time understand business, understand the complexities of regulation, understand the complexities of law enforcement involvement and all of that. So I always found it a place that was exciting and a place that gives me the opportunity to engage, be truly effective, and as it plays out, actually business enabling. So it has been a very exciting place for 20-some years now.
You talked about sort of the pace of change and all that's happening in and around business innovation, the emerging technologies that we see, the regulatory context. I mean, GDPR, I think, was very popular in 2018, and then just the threat environment. How do you keep pace with all that context?
Well, I'll start that. Yeah. There's no way that I'm smart enough to be able to do that. So one, I think you definitely have to take a team approach with that. So when GDPR really came out, for example, I relied heavily on our general counsel and our legal department to really tell me, okay, you gotta read us digest this thing down to what do I really need to get to, and then you definitely have to look at it in terms of how do you collaborate with a larger group. If you think you can understand everything and tackle it, I mean, you're just not going to be able to. So I think really look at it from an overall, how do you help your entire company? You got to make those connections. So really, I see the kind of security officer, CISO role is really the connector of all these things, connecting all the different risks together. Again, understanding what the technical things are, understanding what the legal issues are, privacy issues. I mean, there's so many things that you combine together. So, but I think those of us who are successful are the ones who can connect it together. None of us are going to be maybe one singular, the expert, because I don't think that's what we're meant to be. If there's another role for us, I think really is facilitator, connector, bringing the things together, and also interpreter. I find myself constantly trying to interpret, okay, this whole thing called, how does it relate from what we need to do? Then you're trying to explain technical issues to more risk issues, to business issues. And so as you're trying to do all that, I find myself that, I'm kind of like the UN. I have to interpret it in different ways and get it down to simple things, draw a story, do an analogy, the different aspects there. So the ones who can, I think, do that, provide the right context, is the one who can, because what you're ultimately doing is getting your message across and getting the teams to work together. Because if you can do that, then I think that's where you win.
So I would say that we shouldn't all try to keep up, because it's not a possible task. It's not one we're going to win. So trying to keep up with everything else that's going on around the world, it's just not sustainable for one CISO or one security team or group to actually accomplish. So the way I think about it is, let every person keep up with their role and their job and their level of subject matter expertise. So for example, if you're a network engineer, you're building networks every day. You should know what the evolutions are to the threats of that network. And when something changes, you, the first person and the best person to find it, to know about it, to learn about it, to hear about it. And so I think we have to start driving a little bit more accountability to the people who are the experts, to learn about their jobs, and then take the appropriate steps. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that, I think it's the only way to make this problem scale. Mm-hmm. If we divide and conquer, that's the only way for us to actually keep up.
I wouldn't disagree with anything that anybody else has said, but I do think that one of the things that we are all going through right now is the concept of fluencies, and how many different fluencies can you maintain at the same time. So it's a matter of technical fluency, it's business fluency, it's cloud fluency, it's 3 different versions of cloud fluency and infrastructure, platform, software as a service, and then simultaneously with APIs and CI/CD and online application security and all these different things. You have to kind of have at least a cursory fluency in each one of those things, but then you do, to Shamla's point, have to rely on the experts and not go too deep in each one. Otherwise, you could get kind of sucked down the rabbit hole. So it's definitely a concept of being able to balance deep understanding of various changing things that are happening all at the same time, with the ability to connect dots across all of those at the same time, and be able to connect the right dots to know that this is a big deal or this is not a big deal. And that's really how I think CISOs are quite differentiated from other C-level executives because we have to do that constantly.
So just to augment a couple of issues, as scientists, we have to be aware of emergent technologies. Right now, we spend a lot of time trying to understand what blockchain means to movie making above and beyond Bitcoin. And we do find a lot of applications to consumer fraud and such. However, as a CISO, likely or not, you have a choice. And the choice you have to make in order to survive is to be very clear about the notion of what do you have to lose. So you have to apply some context to your assets, to your content, to everything you have, to your network, in all kinds of perspectives, and then apply security where security needs to be applied. It is mathematically impossible to totally secure everything unless you have an infinite number of resources, which none of us in this table do. So the challenge, therefore, we have is to be aware in terms of inventory, in terms of visibility, and then to assign the proper security means, policy, technology, capacity to be able to affect in accordance to the risk profile of your various assets. That's the game we play every day.
No, I would add another thing, Aileen. I think there's a lot of innovation out there. And I think we have to move outside of that kind of safety zone, right? And CISOs have to start making decisions that are really uncomfortable to embrace and use and consume new technology without expecting it to be perfect. And I think that is one of the best things I have learned at IBM because they have so much innovation. And one of the things I've said to my teams is every time we consume innovation, it's not going to be perfect, especially if you use a zero out of the gate. Well, it may not work every single time. It may only work 10% of the time. But let's embrace that because it's 10% more than we had yesterday. And so embracing innovation, looking for new use cases, understanding what problems we have that we bring to the table that innovation can help us solve, we have to embrace that and we have to embrace that early. If I think about the cloud environment, I think CISOs, single-handedly limited and decelerated the adoption of cloud technology because we didn't want to take the risk. And so I think we disincented our organizations to take that step. We are catching up, clearly, but I think we ought to learn from that experience and become better at embracing innovation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to it. I also think we have to be better at basically failing fast and being able to not look at kind of our controls and new technologies or vendor relationship as like a 5-year. Nope, there's no such thing anymore. You're basically looking at it in terms of what do I have, what do I need, what I do, and then just work through it. So really POCs and things like that, it's a waste of time if you try to look at it as trying to get something perfect. You do enough of what you need to do and then learn quickly to get through that, knowing that, you know what, after a year, it's possible you're going to switch. And with cloud technology and SaaS, it is so much easier than ever. So you're not bound to some vendor solution for the next 5 years. If you are, then you are stuck. And you are going to miss so many things that's going to be evolving. Even 1 year, I think, could be too much. But what you have to do is constantly be able to do it. So you don't have to make the perfect decision. In fact, those who strive to do that are just going to miss too many things. But what you have to be able to do is make good decisions to say, hey, this is going forward. And even if it doesn't work, we're going to learn from it. And then we're going to move to the next step there. So sometimes, yeah, you may need to make 10 mistakes until you get it right. But I would rather do that than spend an enormous amount of time trying to get something perfect and then having no idea whether that's actually going to solve the problem or not. So I think we have to embrace that kind of thinking, embrace that type of notion of, hey, even in security, we could fail. And that's okay. And I think we have to allow organizations to do that and not be like, no, you have to get it perfect every single time. There's really no such thing as that.
By design, so I'm gonna think aloud about what you said. By design, we're risk adverse, but that can take us to a very strange place where we essentially create barriers to anything that can happen. So leave it between us and legal, and nothing happens. However, the business dynamics are such that we don't have that luxury anymore. shadow IT and other methods will bypass us. So either by design or how we are or how we gonna end up being, we have to embrace change and we have to accept it and sort of live with it. So it is a reality of our business. And we just need to, instead of hoping to find it by accident, at least anticipate it and work with it. And as I said, shadow IT is one very big example of us today saying, let's embrace what business requires, being the cloud, being file transfers, being potentially dangerous protocols. So all of that we have to realize they're business realities. So if we embrace them and try to secure them within our means, at least we're not going to find surprises because business will not stop waiting for us.
So I'm going to pivot to sort of the talent shortage here. We hear a lot about there's just not enough cyber professionals out there to fill the seats, so to speak, that are available. But each of you have built, you've developed and invest in your teams. And any thoughts in terms of either how you've done that or just how one could approach that?
My perspective, we found two very distinct notions of who is cybersecurity today coming out of colleges, local colleges mostly. We found people with masters in computer science from quite known universities, and me being an old man, I guess now, and having been doing this for a while, I'm saying, how can you be masters in computer science? You cannot write a line of code. How can that be? Well, it is. It is quite prevalent today that people concentrate on policy, concentrate on analytical skills, and we have to recognize that there is a very good use for these people in the areas of compliance, in the areas of business analysis, in the areas of monitoring and such, independent of how I feel about it. And then there is the hardcore engineering skills, which are coders. There are people who understand IoT, integration of devices. Those, most of the times these days, what I see, they're coming from electrical engineering and more specialization in coding. Where we find challenges is when it comes to people that need to code games, understand virtual reality, understand these technologies that require combination of skills. We had a lot of success with interns, which we find a good foundation and then we develop them. I'm very happy with that notion because they come, they learn the business, and then we grow them. But it is a challenge. You talked about cloud before. We find people that tout cloud experience, but there isn't there. So that becomes tricky, and you need to go through a pretty stringent analysis to find out true skills, both in potential employees as well as consultants. So the overseas recruiting has not been very successful for us. So the only avenue we have is repurposing engineers who want to expand into this area, which is quite attractive, or growing junior, lack of a better word, through an internship program.
For us to address the numbers of people that we are going to need in the next few years, there's some indications there's 2 million people that will be needed, some say 3.5 million that will be needed. Regardless, those numbers are so big that it's not going to be humanly possible for us to create any academic program that would churn out that many people. So I just think that we have to, again, have courage to take risks on people. What we've done is we found people who have good attitude, right? So curious, willing to learn, eager to learn, willing to, think outside the box. So we brought people like that in with that good attitude of curiosity, but also learning our agile principles, failing fast, not being afraid, that kind of stuff. Then we found people with attitude, with good attitude and then good aptitude. Those two things are a very powerful combination, because if you're curious and you want to learn and you're willing to learn and you have the aptitude to learn, I don't care whether you're an arts major, I don't care if you have a background in music, it doesn't matter to me as much. if you have the aptitude, we will teach you from scratch. And that could be, it doesn't matter whether you're 60 years old or whether you're coming right out of college. We will teach you everything you need to know to be successful at the job. And one thing I've had to do is to absorb the reduction in productivity that actually gives. If I hire 10 people, I would get X amount of work if they were experienced. If I hire 10 people and they have, they're not quite as experienced, then I'm going to get a reduced productivity. And it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make because it's an investment in the future. And so, I've been asked questions like, well, what if they leave after you spent all this time training them? So my answer is, so what? It's okay for people to leave because they're still going to make the world a better place by taking their trade and practicing somewhere else. So it's okay. We all have to take and do our share for the industry to try to meet those numbers. Otherwise, we're just all going to fail.
Yeah, I also think that we have to determine that the job, so to say, of a cybersecurity person is not yesterday's problem, meaning that we have to project what the job is going to be. So for us to start hiring, network engineer type folks who understand firewalls and IDS and IPS, that's fine 10 years ago, but that's really not the focus anymore because of automation, because of technology that has advanced, that those types of jobs really is not necessary. And not that it's not important, but there's technology that comes into play. So when I look at a typical SOC analyst in terms of what they used to do 5 years ago, we've automated a lot of that, and that's for the great. Now, still, you need to know the fundamentals, but what I need to know is for tomorrow, I need to get these people called threat hunters. I need to get people who are analysts. I need to get people who are data scientists who then could understand this. So it's a constant hybrid that you're trying to do. So I think our mistakes are not trying to, again, form jobs based on whether it's yesterday or just even today. It's to form jobs for tomorrow. And where is that going? I can't predict everything, but clearly it's going to be based on data. It's going to be placed a lot on analytics, and you got to utilize all this, technology that we're building up, take advantage of it, because that's what we all are striving for. We also have to look at that we are an ecosystem now where it's not shameful to say I have a MSSP, I have partners that I work with. You cannot hire every single type person. So you want to be able to leverage those who are very good at it and bring them together. And at the same time, I want to leverage IBM, I want to leverage everybody, right? Everybody who can do it, because if they have something that I don't need to build, I'm going to use that. And so I think that's the thinking that you have to have, that you don't need to homegrown everything. You don't need to hire every single thing. Everything is going to be, I think, a set of services that you can consume in some way. We're seeing that on the computing side, right? So why can't we also do that as well? So we've seen a lot of success in terms of what we call temp to perm kind of conversions, where we will bring in specialized people who are consultants because of whatever walk of life that they're in, and then we're going to try it out, and they get to see it, we get to see it, but then we're saying morph into my future problems. Don't just solve me yesterday's problems with that. And I think that kind of practice has done well, and I think we have to continue to experiment in those types of practices. So maybe Korn Ferry could also help us with finding those types of things to fill in. And because really, I think we have to be more creative and looking into the future. Like you said, I would rather just take anybody who can think, is smart, perceptive, versus somebody who's got 20 years of cybersecurity, because that really is not that important anymore. Things have shifted too much.
I find it kind of interesting that all three responses have kind of focused on the concept of traits versus talent, or traits versus knowledge. And I think there are very clear traits that make cybersecurity or information security people successful. And it's that drive, it's that sort of inquisitive nature, wanting to, take a little bit of risk, not, be risk averse, but take risks, right? And I would just kind of put those types of traits into two major organizational buckets. One being the people you have, and how do you keep them up to speed on everything that's changing, because it's changing so fast all the time. And you need to have really good talent management processes. You need to have really good sort of cross-training opportunities. Be really good about mentoring and that sort of thing. And then the other side of it is for the people you don't have yet, where do you find them, right? And that's a lot of what we've just talked about. But for us, it's doing things like interviewing for positions you don't have open because you want to know who's good at what, because there's not enough of those people. And when you do have an opening, you want to know exactly who's capable of filling that. You could then do partnerships with different organizations like the Girl Scouts, for example, all the way down in high school, where you're just getting the market sort of interested. You're not really recruiting at that stage, but you're getting the market interested. And then you've got organizations that focus on high school students and ensuring that they have, especially in lower socioeconomic areas, the ability to get a job without going to college and then having tuition reimbursement at the employer pay for their college degree. So you might be able to pipeline that way. You may also then want to consider pipelining directly in the university system a little bit further, along. And we've had great success at partnering with universities, doing scholarships, getting the scholarship students pipelined directly into an internship program. Internship program leads into full-time employment. That's been really good. And then you've got the other types of sort of talented pools that you want to look at. So we're really deliberate at going to conferences, looking for talent there, very specific named conferences, going into military recruiting type environments, right? A lot of the leadership skills that you learn in the military directly apply to the leadership skills you need in business. We can teach the cyber acumen if you have the requisite traits, right? So there's a lot of those sorts of things that I think are very helpful as well.
I think one of the things that we have as big a problem retaining talent than we have recruiting and hiring it. And so, we have to work really hard on retaining. One of the things we've had a lot of success with is we create these small teams of people, and the team stays together and they work together all the time. The work changes every single time. So our projects are broken out into small components, and the next available team picks the next piece of work that needs to be done. And they may not have the skills to do it. They may not have the experience or the knowledge to do it. We'll figure out how to get them the knowledge and the skills. But what it does is it keeps it interesting. So you're not pigeonholed in one role, one job, working on one kind of technology. If the work changes, the team, if they're cohesive enough, they will figure out how to learn new things. And they will figure out how to deliver new capabilities. So, our work changes all the time. So they're also being challenged. They're using it as an opportunity to learn, to develop new skills, and it's a way for them to keep up with the changes and the new things that are out there. So that actually has helped me with retention.
Work-life balance does help a lot. We have tried very hard to rationalize whether we actually need to have people, because that opens you up into hiring from other locales that we don't have an office. It helps you attract working at home moms or other people with expertise, with years of expertise, that are trying to get back into the workforce, but they're trying to find a method. So it takes a lot of flexibility from our end and actually rationalizing what you truly need. And if you can do that, sometimes we're more successful than others, then you can actually deal with the competition that you get. I mean, we're in Seattle. I can tell you the competition is immense, trying to keep people. It is not just money. It's a lot of other perks that other companies can provide that we try, but it's not that easy. And also realizing that everybody wants to work on the latest and most prominent technology. So there's so much of that you can do. You also have to keep your legacy systems running and so on. So you have to maybe internally circulate to the degree possible, because you fit people where their skills fit, and you try to do it that way. So it is a challenge. We do some managed security services because of the shortage and because of the modality that allows you to use only what you need to use. And that's a reality. Even though skills can be questionable, but you need to find the right vendor that works for you. So it's a combination of all these that make it work.
Okay, you all have given a lot of insights and perspective. Any closing comments for either that professional that's coming into information security, or perhaps that future information security leader? What advice would you give him or her?
I'll just start with, basically be totally open-minded in terms of coming into it. Don't fear what you heard about security, which is, it's those network people, dealing with fire. Just, that's what maybe it was, but envision in terms of where the risks are, where the problems are, that's what you can be as well. So, whether you use these terminology, it could be a data scientist, you could be an analyst. So just think of it that way. I also look at it in terms of what people love to solve problems, right? And all kinds of agents, like that's what you want to show the value. And there's a lot of problems here that we're trying to solve, right? So I think that's a good way. So I remember my daughter, she graduated from UCLA. She was a political science major. I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, why don't you do computer science? I could get you a job real easily. But she goes, no, I love doing that. So that's great. You did that. But then after she started going to the workforce, eventually now she's working in a company and she's doing IT. And so it was just amazing how it lends itself to that. But she still has now the critical thinking that comes with what she studied with that. But I think these days, literally in the future, everything's going to be an IT job, right? And no matter what, doesn't matter how you slice it up. So really, IT becomes ubiquitous. What it now becomes is more, critical thinking, good attitude, those who have a yearning to learn, those qualities are still there. And I think those, coming out of college, whatever, if that's what you bring into that passion, you will be successful. Doesn't matter what, because again, none of us can predict the future, but you bring those things into it, you will learn. Just like I learned, I didn't think I was going to be doing this when I was out of college, and I'm sure most of us as well. So you know what? That's the part, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting. So that's what I would recommend.
So advice I would give someone is there's no stereotypes in this profession. So anything you've heard, anything you read, anything you saw that looked like a stereotype, it doesn't exist. So come with an open mind, just like you said, bring your best attitude, bring your aptitude, and show up with your whole self. Mm-hmm.
That's very well put. 25 years ago, there were no information security degrees. 15 years ago, there were no information security degrees. It's really cool that is a thing now. And so I would just say that there's a lot of fundamentals that we had to all learn by trying, by failing, by experimenting, by getting electrocuted, like whatever it was, that this generation now doesn't have to kind of deal with. And I think there's some sort of mettle that comes with sort of failing and getting over it and moving on. But at the same time, there's a lot of science that comes with having an actual very structured process that gets you to the skills you think you're going to need and that sort of thing as well. So I do think there's a very large room and a very large path for a myriad of people that have the knowledge and marry the traits. That's where the two of those things combined together is a really powerful position that many of us as CISOs didn't have 20 years ago.
There is a high degree of self-awareness, not just in this job, but any scientific job. You have to keep up your skills to be successful. And there is no difference here. You have to be able to not only keep up with legacy, but you also have to understand of upcoming evolving technologies. So you have to have that attitude that it's a continuous learning above and beyond the cliche. But the other thing is to realize that, I think somebody said, everything is data. And as such, this environment allows us to say, you're part of the future. So you don't have to become just one little thing. You can be involved in everything. We get involved in policy, we get involved in technology, application of technology, business analysis, and so much, forensics and so on. So it is a very broad perspective that will allow you immense amount of options as you grow as a professional. So it is a good choice. It's not necessarily easy as an entry point, but if we all remember where we started, none of us started this way, we all ended up somewhere we can truly support the young people as they get into this exercise and help them out.
Great. Well, again, thank you all for your thoughts, your insights, and also your commitment to this space. Thank you.